Okay, in this video, I'm going to walk you through how to create a six-sided clay stamp or a digital file to 3D print a clay stamp. And so first thing I did is I've opened up Tinkercad here. I've changed the file name here just to something descriptive so I can remember what it is. And so what we're going to do here is we're going to go into the Tinkercad basic shapes, and we're going to come down here to the bottom, and we're going to select this dice here. So let me just drag this out here, and let's zoom in a little bit so we have a closer view on it. Now, these dimensions here are in millimeters, and so I'm going to change these to 20 and 20 here, and then 20 on the top. And this will make it a 20 millimeter cube, and just a little bit larger. This is a little bit less than an inch. It's probably somewhere between 3/4 of an inch and an inch. And so these are small stamps, but what we're gonna do here is we're gonna learn to use a few basic techniques that are in Tinkercad. And so there are 6 sides. So what I'd like you to do is do 2 sides with what's called the scribble tool, do 2 sides with the text tool, and you're gonna have to mirror the text because remember that you're going to be stamping it into clay, so the text is going to be reversed. And then 2 sides with one of the shapes here. So let's start with the let's start with the scribble tool. And so what you do is you just drag this in here and drop it onto the plane, and it's going to open up this other window here. The scribble tool allows you to scribble like this. And what it'll do is, if you look at this preview, it'll basically extrude that line into a shape. So you can step back here, or you can actually erase here. So you can actually take out part of the design this way if you'd like. But let's just step back here and let's start over. I'm just gonna start with just this little kind of a star-like kind of shape here. And that'll give us kind of a place to start. So you can see my line here is extruded it into a shape. If I'm happy with that in the preview window, then I just click done, and it'll add it right next to my dice here. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this down to about 4. And what in this exercise, I find it easy just to work on the top of the dice. That way you can use this tool here to recess it into the dice if you want. There is this option here if you'd like to explore this called work plane, and that allows you to distinguish like even a vertical plane as your work plane. For this particular exercise, we can just kind of work on the top here. So let me just bring this up. Let me get this over here. And so what we're going to do here is we are going to basically set these into the dice form here. So you can see right now it's kind of resting right on top of that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to just kind of sink it in a little bit here. And so it's kind of sticking up, maybe about halfway. So now what I'm going to do here is you can certainly align this by selecting both and then going up here to align. And that way you can align to the middle of this form. Now, once you start adding other things to the sides, then what it'll do is it'll align off the whole form. So that doesn't mean it's aligned in the circle here. And what you'd want to do is once you have this selected, you can use your arrow keys on your keyboard to move this around. Now, if you're finding that is too big of a jump and you need more control, just go down here to Snap Grid and click on that and pick a smaller option here. So instead of 1 millimeter, let's do 0.25 millimeters, and you'll see that I have much more control with the arrow keys. Okay, so that's looking pretty good to me. Yeah, that's pretty good. It's raised up sufficiently. Maybe I'll just take it down just a smidge like that. And okay, so now once I have this, I need to join the parts together. So these technically are 2 different parts now. I'd like to join those together. And to do that, I select it all and I go to Group and just click on Group. And now I have this as one object. Okay, so now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna rotate this over and get a clean side here. And let me go back to the scribble tool here, and let me just try something a little different. And I'm just gonna kind of do these little dots here, and I think it'll make kind of like these sort of columns that I thought might be interesting on a repeating pattern, like if you were stamping clay. And so, so let's kind of stop right there. Let's take a look at our preview here, and it looks like indeed I have these little columns here. So let's click done. And then now I have this as one group here. Again, I'm gonna move this down to about 4. And then I'll bring this up and then get this in there. Let me raise it up a little bit higher. And okay, and now let's just take a look at this, and you can see it's a little bit too big. If I go to the corner and I hold the shift key down, I can manipulate the whole thing proportionally, which is really nice, because if I were just to move this one in here, it's also going to warp the shape of the circle, so I would have several ovals instead of the circle shape. So, so I'm going to kind of position this, and let's take a look there, and yeah, and that looks pretty good. I'm happy with that. So let's select that and group that, and now we have a grouping of all of these things together. Okay, so that's the scribble tool. And with the next two tools, I'm going to show you how to actually cut into the dice. So we have done two different things where we've added to the surface, but there's also an option here for the shapes called hole, and this will make a recessed space. Okay, so so I'm gonna grab, let me zoom out here, I'm gonna grab the text tool and bring it in here, and it'll be pretty ginormous, mostly because our dice here is pretty small. So now with the text tool, you enter the text here, and I'm just gonna put my initials here, BH. And so now there are not a lot of options for fonts here, but let's just pick one of these, and yeah, let's do this one here. And okay, so now I have this. I'm gonna make this, let's see, let's kind of bevel these in just a little, kind of like that. And let's just add a little bit of a angle there. Okay, so now I have this. It's far too large at the moment. But one of the things I need to do is that if you picture this being stamped, it's going to be reversed. And so if I don't mirror the text, or in other words, flip the text around, then it's going to be backwards. So what I need to do is select the text here, and then go up here to mirror and click on mirror, and it's going to give you a couple options. You can mirror it up and down that way, or side to side, and what I want to do is the side to side. So I'm going to click on this arrow, and now I have my initials in reverse. Okay, so now once I do that, I'm going to hold the shift key on the corner here. I'm going to bring this down a little smaller. Let's zoom in here, and let's rotate this again to 90, and okay, there we go. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring this up here, and going to get it sort of centered there. Obviously, you can see now it's a little bit too big, so let me just hold shift down again, move this. Now, if you want to mess around with the proportions of the letters, you can certainly change the proportions here. So you don't feel like you always have to do the shift. If you don't hold shift, you can move the letters around like that. So so maybe we'll make it a little bit taller like that. And okay, so now what I'm going to do here is let me just center that a little bit more in the circle. And okay, so now before I do anything with this, I'm going to also put these initials on another side, so I can have one side raised and one side as a reductive. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate this. So I select it. On a Mac, you're going to hit Command D, and on a PC, you'll hit Control D. And then what you'll do is, so let me just duplicate this, and I'm just going to set it over here. Okay, so now I can work with this, and this is sort of hovering over in space here. So now let me just get a side view here and kind of see how much that's sticking up. What I'm going to do is I'm going to bring this down. Okay, so you can see how deep it is actually. And actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to just, let's see, let me bring this up a little bit more and see how much. Okay, so now I need to recenter it now that I've raised the, okay. So now what I want to do, if I want to recess this, what I do is I click this and I turn this from a solid into a hole. And hole means that whatever it's overlapping in terms of the shape, so if it's overlapping another form, it's going to basically cut that out. And so, so what I do now is once I have this, once I have this set up, then now what I do is in order for it to actually cut, I need to group it together. So I'm going to select it again, and I'm going to group this. When I group it, it's going to cut that shape into the form. So you can kind of see now I have a reversed stamp here. So not only the letters reversed, but when I push this into clay, the clay is going to kind of smush up into these letters and create a raised letter, okay, or letters. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to rotate this again, another 90, and I'm going to put my initials back up here, but in this case, I want to have it raised up off the surface. So, so what I'm going to do here is I will center this again, okay, use the arrow keys, and then I'm going to take a look at the side, okay, and that's about good. Maybe I want it to be just a smidge lower, and let's see. Okay, so maybe I want it to be a little bit higher than that. Okay, so that's good. Now we have letters that are raised, and then I'm going to select that and group it. Okay, so now I'm not sure why it changes the whole color like that, but sometimes that happens. But anyway, so now I have the raised letters on one side, and then I have my recessed letters on the other, okay? So now I still have two more sides, okay? So I have this side over here and this side over here. So let me kind of step back a little bit. Let me rotate this around again to get to 90. And okay, so now what I'd like you to do is to experiment with some of the shapes. So I'm just gonna grab this kind of cone shape here. I'm gonna hold this down and make these kind of relatively small. I'm gonna kind of squish this down. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring this up here, and I'm going to place one of them up there. Now, looks like I have placed it pretty much right on the edge there. So, so that's looking good. It might be a little high. I'm going to just kind of push this down just a little bit. I don't want that texture to be so much that it's that it's actually cutting through the clay or anything like that. So, so now I'm going to kind of set this on the edge here. And just for the sake of this video, I'm going to kind of move pretty quickly here. If you were to really do this, for real, you might actually like plan this out and figure out the size, like how big these need to be. But I'm gonna duplicate this again with a Control D or a Command D, and I'm gonna just move these over here. And I'm just going to keep going around the circle here. And I'm going to, just using the Control or Command D to duplicate. And then, let's see if this lines up. And one more, actually two more. I'll put one right here. And I will put one in the middle. Oops. Let's try that again. Okay. Well, that worked out pretty well, on the first chance there. And so now, again, what I need to do is I am going to select that all and group that together so it's all one object, okay? So now I have one more edge, and that is the edge on the bottom there. So what I'm going to need to do is we need to rotate this 180, and so I can get to the bottom here, okay? So now that I have this area exposed, what I'm going to do is I'll just try one of the other shapes. Like maybe I'll try the star here. And Okay, again, hold the shift key down. And in this case, I do want to show, I want to be able to see the bottom of it. So that's why I'm going to flip this around 180. And then I'm going to bring this up here and set it up on the top. Okay. Now let's take a look. Okay, and it's definitely too big. And so let's just make that a little bit smaller. And so it sort of fits in there. Now, what I'd like to do is I want to cut this shape out of the dice here. So I'm going to select that. Remember, we got to go to Whole, and then now we can actually smush this back down into the form like that. Now, I'll use my arrow keys, kind of make sure it's sort of centered there. Now, you don't want to go too low here. So if you go underneath it, then it'll just be hidden there. But I want to have this exposed here so that, so you can kind of see here, it's just barely sticking up. You see this just a little edge there. And that's perfect. So what I want to do now is that, remember, in order to actually cut it, you have to select it all like this again, and then go to Group. And then you'll see when, now that it's grouped, now that I have cut that reversed shape out of the dice. So now when I push this into the clay, I'll have a round circle, and then I'll have this kind of star shape in the middle. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I will probably, let's see here, I'm going to select that, and I'm going to flip this upside back the way that it was. And because I'm probably going to print, let's see. So also, if you're finding it hard to get this lined up, you could just type it in there like that too. So, and this is how I will probably print it. I think, I'll need to generate some support when I do this in Cura for here and here, but I think this would be the right way to do it. And what I'll do is I will set this down on the bed just to make sure. Okay. And that's it. So now what I'm going to do is I will do another video in Cura to show you how to prepare this to be printed. And then once it's printed, then we can start using it. So, just from this little tool here, this thing that's only about 1 inch in each direction, we're going to have all these different textures and letters and recessed shapes and things like that we can work with. And so this is a really good a really good exercise to do to learn some of the basic tools in Tinkercad. And so remember that Tinkercad will save your files automatically to your account. And so just remember to change the file name up here. And then when you are ready to, and when you're done, then what you'll want to do is you'll want to go up here to export, and you'll export it as an STL file. And once you have the STL file, then you can import it into Cura and prepare it to be 3D printed. So that's it for this demo. Just the best thing to do is just to get into your Tinkercad account and just start messing around and experiment. You have nothing to lose, so just have fun with it and see what you can come up with.